Hey all, this is Redditosker. Today I want to talk about the possibility of the new Armored Core game being a Souls-like. I'm going to talk about the evidence pointing to that being the case. I'm going to talk about FightinCowboy's recent video in which he looks at that same evidence and argues that it won't be very much like Dark Souls at all. FightinCowboy is a very large and popular Souls YouTuber. And then I'm going to explain why I think he's mistaken. First, let me properly frame this discussion. The people that are fans of Armored Core are worried about this new Armored Core game being too much like Dark Souls, too much like Elden Ring. They want Armored Core to stay Armored Core and Souls to stay Souls. There's many in the community that don't want their favorite video game series to just be another Souls game with a mech skin. Let me just read you a post I found on Reddit. There's a lot of these kind of things going around, but this is pretty emblematic of what the sentiment is. PSA to Souls fans about Armored Core 6. I've definitely been seeing opinions here about Armored Core 6, so I wanted to talk about it to newcomers, so people don't try to ruin this for Armored Core fans. Armored Core is not Souls. Don't say I want it to be Souls. Don't beg for Souls features in Armored Core 6. Don't be closed-minded ass about Armored Core 6. This is Armored Core 6, which means it's already a long-established franchise that existed before Demon Souls. It plays completely different to it. If you haven't played Armored Core, don't take this the wrong way. Don't then come over here and say that they should make it play like a completely different series. Souls is Souls, Armored Core is Armored Core. They aren't the same. Well, you get the idea. I'll just leave it at that. And frankly, I sympathize with this group of people. We Souls fans get this often. Over the years, Souls has increased and increased in popularity, and as more and more people come into the series, there are always those that demand changes to the formula. Changes that would remove many of the things we like about Souls games. So I definitely understand where these people are coming from. We'll get into why I don't think they need to worry later down the line. But first, let's look at the evidence that Armored Core 6 will in fact borrow from Souls games. First is the initial leak from the Reset-era user Red Licorice. Red Licorice leaked Armored Core information in January that we now know is legitimate. We know that because the screenshots he took of the game's description tracks well with what we know about Armored Core 6 now. Red Licorice had the opportunity to look at gameplay for a bit, and he describes the experience in this post. He writes, "The boss fight looked quite Soulsy. The long-range gunfire reminded me of Virtua On, that's my frame of reference. I'm not a mech fan and haven't played any Armored Core games. The player character in a white mech went in close to the big robot boss and fought with like an energy laser sword. This looks Souls-like. The field gameplay, the player in the same white mech seemed to be following a couple of other players in the distance. Co-op? And they were walking, flying close to the ground maybe, through a snowy area towards either a large wall or gate. This seemed Soulsy too, the vastness of the architecture, but it wasn't a castle, more like a worn-down metal stone wall or gate. It was quite short." Okay, the pertinent information here is that he saw the player character in a smaller white mech fight a larger robot boss, and the way that the fight played out gave him the impression that it was Soulsy. In FightinCowboy's video, he mentions this piece of evidence. He dismisses it by pointing out that this person hasn't played any Armored Core games, and so he's not keen to trust that the guy knows what an Armored Core game looks like. He then shows a gameplay clip of himself shooting and then rushing in with the sword, claiming that that was basically what was described.
The player character in the white mech went in closer to a bigger robot boss and fought with an energy or laser sword. This looked Souls style. Now, while his frame of reference isn't that far off because both Virtua On as well as Armored Core released in the late 90s, it is still over 20 years old, so I'm not all that keen on trusting this person to know what is and isn't Armored Core. Looking at some gameplay from Verdict Day, here I'm shooting targets from far away, and then I see an opportunity, I'm going to dash on and swing the sword, get a triple kill taking out some tanks. And this is basically in line with what he described of shooting and then them rushing in to attack with the sword.
What Cowboy failed to mention, though, is that Red Licorice elaborated on this point later down in the thread. He later writes, "The boss fight seemed very Soulsy in terms of speed and style. It looked like an industrial-looking brown room. The player started afar, locked on, firing guns, then closed in and attacked melee. And the speed/movement all seemed very familiar Souls style. If I remember correctly, the boss had a domed head and was bigger than the player, but not huge. If I had to guess, I'd say this was like an Asylum or Taurus Demon style early boss." In this post, Red Licorice is being more descriptive. He's saying that the melee and speed movement all seemed very familiar Soul style. And I think that this post effectively refutes Fighting Cowboy's argument. You don't need to have expertise in Armored Core games to know what Soulsy means, to know what Souls combat looks like. And what's being described here is very different than the clip that Fighting Cowboy showed in his video. But just to put the nail in the coffin, Red Licorice elaborates further. He writes, "The boss fight seemed Dark Souls to me rather than Sekiro. When the player got in close, the pacing was like attack, dodge, attack. I don't think the player dodge rolled, but the boss retaliated and the flow of the combat was familiar in the classic Dark Souls way. The faraway gunfire was not Souls-like, obviously, and reminded me of Virtua On as the player was locked on. This was all ground-based." So you can't really get more clear than that. In Fighting Cowboy's video, he asserted that the gameplay definitely was not going to be the methodical gameplay that we are used to in Souls. But according to the only person that has seen it and has talked about it, it is exactly that. More so even than Sekiro. I've never played an Armored Core game. I'm going to. I've got a couple ordered and coming. But even being completely ignorant of the genre, you couldn't show me a clip of gameplay that's similar to the gameplay that Fighting Cowboy showed on his video, and to make me come to the conclusion, oh, well, that's very Soulsy, that's very Souls-like. It would be impossible for a Souls player to look at what was on his screen and come away with the impression that that was anything like a Souls game. Alright, let me move on to the next piece of evidence. Bandai Namco sent this press release to a bunch of people. This press release reads, "Armored Core will offer a game experience based on the mech game know-how from software cultivated over 25 years of developing games in the series, but now introducing groundbreaking gameplay found in the developer's recent action games. The new Armored Core title will combine these elements into thrilling action that only mechas can provide. The game promises to be a unique entry in the mech action game genre." So the reason this is interesting is because it says, now introducing groundbreaking gameplay found in the developer's recent action games. So when describing the gameplay, they are associating it to their recent action games. And all of their recent action games are, Elden Ring, Sekiro, Dark Souls. That's it. It could not be more clear. They are introducing the gameplay found in the developer's recent action games to Armored Core. They mention specifically the gameplay. I just don't think there's any wiggle room here. Alright, now you guys have all the evidence. You can come to your own conclusions based on the existing information. So I'm going to do the same and put forward my opinion here. I think that Armored Core is going to borrow a lot from Dark Souls, but I don't think that makes it a Souls game. I don't consider Sekiro to be a Souls game. Sekiro clearly borrows heavily from Souls formulas, but the feelings you get playing Sekiro are very different than the feelings you get playing Dark Souls. In Sekiro, the action is always front and center. There's no build making, no stat distribution. There's no weapon selection. There's no exploring every nook and cranny of a castle and trying to find all the weapons and the spells and the items. Despite the obvious similarities, I think it's just a very different game. And I suspect that Armored Core will do something like that. There's no reason why it has to be one or the other. I'm sure that From Software is talented enough to have this new Armored Core game maintain its identity as an Armored Core game, while also introducing new things to it from the Souls series that work with Armored Core games. I don't know what those things are or how they're going to play out, but I think it kind of doesn't matter. Here's my final opinion, here's my conclusion. I think that Souls players and Armored Core players should keep an open mind, regardless of what the game turns out to be like. Fundamentally, I don't care if the new Armored Core game is completely like the old Armored Core games and nothing like Souls games. I don't care if it's completely like Souls games and nothing like the old Armored Core games. I don't care if it's a perfect blend of the both, and I don't care if it's completely different from either. I don't care. I have complete faith in From Software. They have not disappointed me yet with any video game that they've made that I've played. I am completely open to whatever new experiences they want to present me. I'm not going to go to a fancy restaurant and tell the chef how to cook. I'm going to let him cook. I'm going to trust his reputation and scarf down whatever's in front of me. And that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.